The desert sun had already begun to fade when the manager of a roadside motel in Yuma, Arizona, heard a faint sound coming from room 12. It was a whimper, soft, hesitant, almost afraid to exist. He knocked once, then again, and when no one answered, he used his spare key. Inside, the air was still and dry. The curtains were drawn and the smell of stale cigarettes filled the room. On the unmade bed sat a little boy, no older than 3, clutching a worn-out blanket and staring at the door with wide, tearful eyes. There was no sign of any adult, no suitcase, no note. Just a half-empty bottle of water on the nightstand and a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. The boy didn't speak at first. He only looked up at the man and whispered one word: Mama. That night, the police were called. Reporters gathered outside the motel, curious about the mysterious abandoned child. But despite every effort, checking nearby hospitals, airports, even missing persons lists, no one came forward. The boy had no identification, no family, and no name. One of the officers, a woman named Sarah Daniels, felt a pang of sorrow as she watched him fall asleep in the child services van. "We'll call him Eli," she said softly. "He deserves a name." Eli was taken to St. Anthony's Orphanage, a small, crowded home run by nuns and volunteers. Life there was simple but harsh. The days were long and the nights often filled with the cries of children who still dreamed of parents returning for them. Eli was quiet, always sitting by the window. Sometimes he would trace shapes on the foggy glass, pretending it was the desert horizon. The nun said he was a good boy, obedient, kind, and gentle, but there was something haunting about the way he watched people come and go. At age 7, a couple from Phoenix visited the orphanage. Mark and Linda Wheeler had tried for years to have children but couldn't. When they saw Eli sitting alone in the corner, holding that same torn rabbit, Linda's eyes filled with tears. "That's our son," she whispered. The adoption process took months, but when it was finally approved, the Wheelers drove back to Phoenix with Eli asleep in the back seat. They promised him a home, a future, and a love that would never fade. For the first time in his life, Eli had his own room. Linda decorated it with blue stars on the ceiling and a small bookshelf filled with storybooks. Mark taught him how to ride a bike, and every Saturday they went out for ice cream, chocolate chip, his favorite. But at night, Eli often woke up crying. He would see flashes of a woman's face in his dreams, someone with tired eyes and a voice that sang softly in another language. When he tried to remember, the image slipped away like sand between his fingers. "Bad dream again?" Linda would whisper, brushing his hair gently. He'd nod, pretending he was okay. The years passed, and Eli grew into a kind but cautious young man. He excelled in school, loved drawing desert landscapes, and never missed a chance to help others. Yet deep inside, there was always a quiet ache, a question that followed him everywhere. Who am I really? He didn't know that one day, decades later, that question would finally be answered, with a single, unexpected phone call. If you were Eli, would you want to uncover the truth about your past, no matter how painful it might be? Comment below. Your opinion might surprise others. Years passed, and Eli's life slowly found its rhythm. By the time he turned 18, Phoenix had become both his home and his cage. His adoptive parents, Mark and Linda, had given him everything they could: love, stability, and a sense of belonging. Yet every time he looked at the stars above the desert sky, that same question still burned inside him. Where did I come from? After high school, Eli moved into a small apartment near downtown Phoenix. He worked long hours as a mechanic, hands always stained with grease, saving every dollar he could. He was good with engines. He said they made sense, unlike people. Linda worried about him. "You don't talk much these days," she'd say over the phone. "I'm fine, Mom," he'd answer. "Just tired." But he wasn't just tired. He was lonely. Something in him had always felt unfinished, like a song missing its last note. He had no childhood photos before the age of 7, no stories about where he was born, and no family history. The Wheelers tried to get information from the orphanage, but all they found were a few faded papers and a note from social services. Child found abandoned in Motel, Yuma, AZ. No parental claims. At 25, Eli fell in love for the first time. Her name was Rachel, a nurse with a kind smile and an adventurous heart. She loved how calm he was, how deeply he listened. But as their relationship grew, Rachel noticed something that troubled her. Eli avoided any talk about family, roots, or childhood. "Don't you ever wonder about them?" she once asked gently. He looked away. "Sometimes, but some doors are better left closed." Their love was real, but the distance in his heart remained. Eventually, that silence pushed them apart. Rachel left one spring morning and Eli never tried to stop her. The years blended into one another. Work, bills, birthdays, and quiet evenings with coffee and old radio songs. He never married. He became the kind of man people liked but never really knew. By his late 40s, Eli had built a small auto repair shop of his own. The customers trusted him. Kids in the neighborhood called him Mr. Fix-It. From the outside, his life looked steady, peaceful, maybe even happy. But inside, there was still that child sitting alone in room 12 of the old motel, waiting for someone to come back. One evening, after closing the shop, Eli sat at his desk sorting through old bills. The phone on the counter rang. An unknown number. He hesitated before answering. "Hello?" The voice on the other end trembled slightly. "Is this Eli Wheeler?" "Yes. Who's this?" There was a pause, a long one, followed by a quiet breath. "My name is Grace Miller. I think I know who you really are." Eli frowned. "Excuse me?" "I've been searching for someone for a long time," the woman continued. "A boy who disappeared in 1978. I believe you're him." Eli's heart started to pound. He felt dizzy, gripping the edge of the desk. "This is some kind of scam," he muttered. But before he could hang up, Grace said something that froze him. She mentioned the motel's name, Desert Star Inn, the same one where he had been found all those years ago. "How do you know that?" he whispered. "Because," she said softly, "your mother told me." The line went silent for a few seconds that felt like forever. Eli's hand trembled as he stared at the phone, his mind spinning. After 47 years of silence, someone had finally spoken the name of his mother. But who was this woman? And why now? If you were Eli, would you call her back? Or walk away to protect the life you've built? Tell us what you would do in the comments. Eli didn't sleep that night. The voice on the phone echoed in his head, calm, trembling, certain. "Because your mother told me." He sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying those words over and over. His mother, the woman from his dreams. Could it really be true? By morning, curiosity had become a storm inside him. He found the courage to call back. The phone rang twice before Grace answered. "I wasn't sure if you'd call," she said softly. "I almost didn't," Eli admitted. "But I need to know what you meant. How do you know about me?" Grace took a deep breath. "I'm a volunteer with a genealogy research group. A few years ago, a woman came to us looking for her son. She told us she had left him in a motel when he was 3, because she was running for her life." Eli's hands trembled. "Running from who?" Grace hesitated. "From your father." The words hit him like a punch. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Grace continued, her voice cracking. "She said he was violent, that she thought he would kill her and maybe hurt you too. She had no choice but to leave you somewhere safe and disappear. She's been searching ever since." Eli closed his eyes, the pain washing over him. "That doesn't make sense," he whispered. "Why wait 47 years?" "She tried before," Grace said, "but she was poor, sick, and afraid. It took her decades to come forward again. She's dying now, Eli. She wanted me to find you before it's too late." Silence. Outside, the Arizona sun was burning through the blinds, painting stripes of gold across his desk. Eli didn't move. He couldn't. Finally, he said, "Where is she?" Grace paused. "She's in a small town in Nevada, a place called Carson Springs. I can send you the address if you want to see her." Eli didn't answer right away. Part of him wanted to hang up and pretend this never happened, to protect the fragile peace he'd built. But another part, the little boy inside him, was screaming to go. "Send it," he said finally. That night, he packed a small duffel bag and got into his old pickup truck. As he drove through the open desert, the miles stretching endlessly ahead, fragments of memory began to return. The smell of cheap motel soap, a woman's voice singing softly in Spanish, the sound of rain on a tin roof. He didn't know what he'd find in Carson Springs. Maybe a mistake, maybe heartbreak. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't keep running from the truth. After 8 hours on the road, he reached the tiny Nevada town just as the sun dipped below the mountains. Grace was waiting for him outside a diner, holding a file folder and a nervous smile. She was in her 60s with kind eyes that spoke of both warmth and weariness. "Eli," she said, extending her hand. "I'm so glad you came." "Is she really here?" he asked. Grace nodded. "She is. And there's something else you need to know." He frowned. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then opened the folder. Inside was an old, faded photograph, a young woman holding a baby in her arms. But there was another child in the picture too, standing beside her, maybe 5 or 6 years old. Eli stared at it, confused. "Who's that?" Grace's voice trembled. "That's your sister." The air around him seemed to vanish. "My... what?" "She's alive, Eli," Grace said gently. "And she's been looking for you too." The world spun around him as the truth began to crack open. All those years he thought he was utterly alone, but maybe he never was. Eli sat in silence, staring at the photograph. The faces in it were old and worn, yet the woman's eyes, the same deep brown as his, pierced straight through time. And beside her, the small girl with braids and a shy smile. His sister. "I don't understand," he murmured. "I was alone in that motel. How could I have a sister?" Grace nodded gently. "Her name is Maria. She was older than you. Your mother sent her to live with her grandmother just a few weeks before she disappeared. She thought she could protect at least one of you." Eli's chest tightened. "So she left me behind to keep me safe?" "She thought she'd come back for you," Grace said. "But things didn't go the way she planned. She was running from something much darker than anyone knew." The words sank deep into Eli's heart. He tried to imagine his mother, terrified and desperate, trying to save her children from a man capable of violence. It was painful, but for the first time, he didn't feel anger. He felt compassion. Grace reached across the table and placed a hand over his. "Maria wants to meet you. She's been searching for years. When your mother became too sick to travel, she begged me to find you before it was too late." Eli's voice trembled. "Where is she now?" Grace smiled softly. "Just a few miles from here." The next morning the sky was pale and quiet when Eli arrived at a small house on the edge of town. The front porch creaked under his boots. He could hear the sound of wind chimes and the faint barking of a dog in the distance. The door opened slowly and a woman stepped out. She was in her early 50s with dark hair streaked with silver and eyes that mirrored his own. "Eli?" she whispered. He froze. There was something strangely familiar in her expression, like looking into a reflection of a memory he never knew he had. "I'm Maria," she said. Her voice cracked on the second word. For a long moment they just stood there, neither of them knowing what to say. Then, as if pulled by something greater than either could resist, Maria stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Eli didn't remember moving, but suddenly he was holding her tight, his face buried in her shoulder, both of them shaking as years of silence and longing dissolved into tears. "I thought I was alone," he whispered. "I did too," she sobbed. "All my life, I've been missing someone, and now you're here." They spent the rest of the day talking, sharing pieces of two broken histories that finally made sense together. Maria told him how she grew up believing her mother had died. Only later did she discover fragments of the truth, letters hidden in an old box, a photo, and finally a contact from Grace. When Eli asked about their mother, Maria's eyes filled with tears again. "She's weak, Eli, but she's been waiting for you. She talks about you every day." He swallowed hard. "I need to see her." Maria nodded. "She's at St. Agnes Hospice here in Carson Springs. Grace can take you there tomorrow morning." That night Eli sat alone in his motel room, the irony not lost on him. Another room, another chapter. The air smelled faintly of dust and old furniture, and through the thin curtains he could see the stars flickering over the desert. He thought about the little boy he once was, waiting for someone to come back. And now, almost 5 decades later, the waiting was finally over. He didn't know what he'd say when he saw his mother. He didn't even know if she'd recognize him. But deep down, he already knew what he needed to feel. Peace. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, Eli whispered to himself, "I'm ready." But he had no idea that the truth waiting at the hospice would change everything once again. If you were in Eli's place, would you forgive your mother for abandoning you? Or would the pain be too deep to let go? Comment below. Your answer might inspire someone else. The hospice was quiet, the kind of silence that carried both peace and sorrow. Eli walked slowly down the narrow hallway, his palms sweating, his heart pounding like it was trying to escape his chest. Grace led the way, her steps gentle, her face calm but full of understanding. "She knows you're here," Grace said softly. "She's been waiting a long time for this." Eli nodded, unable to speak. For 47 years he had wondered if this moment would ever come. Every heartbeat felt like an echo of the past, of that little boy in room 12 who had waited for someone to return. When Grace opened the door to room 14, sunlight spilled in through the curtains. The room smelled faintly of lavender and antiseptic. Machines hummed softly beside the bed, and in it lay a frail woman with gray hair and deep brown eyes that mirrored his own. She turned her head slowly and gasped. "Eli." The sound of his name and her voice broke something inside him. He stepped closer, unable to breathe, his vision blurring with tears. "It's me," he whispered. "It's your son." Her lips trembled, and she reached out a trembling hand. Eli hesitated for a second, then took it in his, feeling the warmth of the mother he'd never known. "I prayed that I'd see you again before I go," she said weakly. "I never stopped praying, even when I lost hope." He sat beside her bed, his eyes searching her face for answers that had haunted him his entire life. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why did you leave me there?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Because I thought it was the only way to save you," she whispered. "Your father was dangerous. He hurt people. I tried to run, but he found us in Yuma. That night I left you at the motel so I could lead him away. I thought I'd be back before sunrise." Her voice cracked. "But he caught me first." Eli closed his eyes. The truth hit him like a wave, heavy, tragic, and liberating all at once. He imagined her fear, the chaos of that night, the impossible choice she had made. "I looked for you," she continued, her breath shallow. "I went back, but you were gone. I searched for years, and when I couldn't find you, I told myself maybe you'd been adopted by good people. I prayed that you'd be loved." He took a deep breath, his voice trembling. I had a good life. My parents, the ones who adopted me, they were kind. They gave me everything. But I never stopped feeling something was missing." She smiled faintly. "That missing piece was me." Eli felt tears fall freely down his face. "I used to think you didn't want me," he whispered, "that maybe I wasn't worth coming back for." "Oh, Eli," she breathed, her voice barely audible. "You were my whole world. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day." He leaned closer, pressing his forehead against hers. "I forgive you, Mom," he said softly. "I forgive you for everything." Her lips curved into a small, peaceful smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "That's all I needed to hear." Her breathing slowed. Eli held her hand as her eyes fluttered shut, her expression calm, as if decades of guilt had finally lifted. He stayed there long after the machines went silent, his tears soaking her hand, his heart heavy, but free. Maria entered quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "She's at peace now," she whispered. Eli nodded, unable to speak. "So am I," he finally said. Later that evening, they sat outside the hospice, watching the sunset paint the desert in gold. The horizon stretched endlessly, glowing like a promise. "Do you think she knew how much we loved her?" Maria asked. "I think she did," Eli said softly. She found her way back to us. He reached into his jacket and pulled out something small, the old stuffed rabbit he had kept since childhood. Its fabric was worn, its ear missing, but it still carried the same quiet comfort. He placed it gently on the railing, the wind brushing against it. "She left this with me," he said. "I always thought it was just a toy, but now I realize it was her way of telling me she'd come back." Maria smiled through her tears. "And she did, Eli. She really did." As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, Eli felt something he had never truly felt before: peace. The little boy who once sat alone in that motel room had finally been found, not by his mother's return but by his own forgiveness. He closed his eyes and whispered to the wind, "I'm home." Sometimes the greatest journey is not about finding who left us, but understanding why they did. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's remembering without pain. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional true stories. And tell us in the comments, do you believe forgiveness can truly set a person free?